Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about our cross sections, which is going to cover our 7th grade Geometry 3 standards. Now a lot of people are like, cross sections? Have you ever worked with those before? Most of you are going to say no, but somehow I kind of disagree. Let's see if this rings a bell. Now, does this look familiar? I'm sure many of you have seen this game, if not played it before. Now, we all know how much you guys love video games, but this Fruit Ninja is actually all about our cross sections, how we're slicing it, and you can actually see the fruit fall apart. And you see the shape when I cut it, that apple? You can see that cross section that's actually occurring. Now, I could stand here and play this game for a while. It'd be a lot more fun than giving notes, but I think I'm going to go ahead and stop for right now. So that game was about that cross sections. So that's what we're talking about today. I can take slices of any three-dimensional figure, and I should be able to start visualizing in my head what that shape would look like when I pulled it apart. So any of those three-dimensional figures with a cross plane actually is what we call a cross section. Now I can tell you there are some ways I can actually slice my three-dimensional figures. I can slice it vertically, and again, vertically means going up and down. I could slice it horizontally, and remember, horizontally is going to be your left to right. Or, of course, I can slice anything diagonally. Those are the three different ways that we're going to go ahead and look at our cross sections today. So, if I go ahead and cut it perpendicular. So if I'm going to cut it perpendicular, parallel, that's what I'm looking at. If I'm going to cut it parallel to the base, well, that's when we're talking about that horizontal cross section. If I go ahead and cut it parallel to the base, it's going to look just like the base. Whatever the shape of the base is going to be the shape of that cross section. Then, if I decide, you know what, I'm going to do it perpendicular, which means I'm going from the top straight down to the bottom. If it was perpendicular to the base, well, then that cross section is going to look just like the lateral face. In other words, the side of that three-dimensional figure. And last, if I cut it diagonally, well, then my cross section is going to look like a stretched out base. Whatever the base is, it's going to be that same shape, but more stretched out. So let me give you an example. Here we have our cylinder. Now, let's look at the base, because that's what's really going to help us decide what the shape of the cross section is. So we've got our two bases, because it is a cylinder, it's got two bases. So I can see that base here, and I can see that base here. Now, let's go ahead and cut it parallel to the base. Again, parallel means I'm going to cut it horizontally, right through the middle. So if I go ahead and cut it right through the middle, which is going on right here, you can see here comes this nice long sheet that's going to cut through this. Well, when I'm done and I open it up, this is what I'm going to see when I open those up, which is the exact same shape as the base itself. It's a circle. So if I cut right through the middle between the two bases, it's going to look just like the shape of the base. But if I take that base, in fact, let's go ahead and look at those bases. Here's my base on top, and here's my base on the bottom. Well, I'm not going to cut it parallel. I'm going to cut it perpendicular. So when I cut it perpendicular, that means I'm taking the slice and I'm going from the top straight down to the bottom, and I'm going to open it up. And when I open that up, it's going to look like the side, which is over here, is a rectangle. So it's going to give me a rectangular shape when I cut it perpendicular to the base, straight down from the top to the bottom. I'm kind of cutting the base apart. And of course, if I cut it diagonally, well, it's going to look like that base, but it's going to be more stretched out. And a stretched out circle is what we call an oval. So let's go ahead and look at another one. Here is my cone. Whoops, wrong thing. We don't want a highlighter. Here's our cone. And what shape is the base? It's a circle. So now let's think about what our rules are. If it is parallel to the base, meaning I'm cutting above the base right through the middle, I'm going to cut through that base. It should be the exact same shape as the base. But since it's a pyramid, it's just going to be a smaller size, but it's going to be the same shape. So since it's parallel, if my base is a circle, my cross section will be a circle. But if I go ahead and take it perpendicular, going from that apex down to the base, well, that shape right there is going to be you guessed it, just like the side, a triangle. Now going back to that diagonal, well, if it's diagonal and the base is a circle, well, it's going to be a stretched out circle, which we call an oval. Now let's go ahead and look at this rectangular prism. What shape is the base? Well, the base is a rectangle. I've got a rectangular prism. So now when I go ahead and cut it right through that middle, parallel to the base, well, you can see what happens is I have, let me get that right color, the same shape as the base, which is a rectangle. Exact same when I cut it parallel to the base. But now I'm going to go ahead and cut it from the top straight down to the bottom. I'm going to cut it perpendicular. So this time when I go ahead and cut it perpendicular, you can see this is the slice I'm using. But when I go ahead and look at the shape, it's going to be just like the side. And the sides of a rectangular prism are still, you can see right here, the sides are still rectangles. So that's the shape it's going to end up taking. So this is going to give me a rectangle. And if I do it diagonal to the base, it's going to be that nice same shape as the base, that rectangle, but it's definitely going to be more stretched out. That's going to give me a stretched out rectangle. Now I'm just going to look at a few over here. We already did the pyramids and things like that, but if I go ahead and let's look at going through parallel to the base. Well, right now when you look at this shape, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, six-sided base, that means your base is a hexagon. This is a hexagonal pyramid. So when I go right through the middle and I'm cutting it like this and I open it, it's going to be the exact same shape as the base, which means it's going to give me a hexagon. when I cut it down from the apex straight down to the base and I open it up, it's going to look like the sides. And those sides are triangles. So my cross section, when I take it perpendicular to that base, will be a triangle. And of course, if I go ahead and do it diagonally through my figure, it's going to be a stretched out base, which means it's still going to be a hexagon, just more stretched out. So I want to look at one last one, and this is my triangular prism right here. So you know your bases are these triangles. That's what your base is. So remember, when you cut it right through the two bases, you're actually going to be cutting and opening it up. So it's between the two bases. It's going to give you that same shape as the base, which means it's going to be a triangle. When you cut it right through the two bases, that means you are cutting it so it's going through the two triangles. It's going to look like the sides between the bases. And if you look at the sides between the bases, all the sides between the bases are all rectangles. So your cross section is going to be a rectangle. And if we do it diagonally, it's going to be the same shape as the base, just more stretched out. So what is the shape of the base? It's a triangle, which means I'm going to get another triangle, just more stretched out. We're going to look at this some more in class, but I hope at least it's a good introduction to what I'm saying when I talk about a cross section.